Jai Hind. The topic which we are going to discuss today is basically introduction to cloud computing, and it is the topic, very first topic which is covered under unit 1 of your subject cloud computing. So basically first we will see the definition of cloud computing. As you people are aware, nowadays a lot of products you are already using, or you could say the services which you are using that have been deployed for the cloud. So generally the cloud, it is a term which is basically used as a metaphor for the internet. And computing, you are aware what is the meaning of computing. It means when you get something or when you achieve your aim or goal after performing any result oriented activity. So you say that you are doing certain kind of computation or doing computing. So cloud computing, it is the mixture or combination, you could say, of two words, cloud and computing. So cloud, internet, computing, that is you are performing or doing certain kind of action. Now when you are performing certain kind of action, then on what you are performing that activity, that matters the most. So we could say the cloud computing is basically storing or accessing the data and programs over the internet instead of your computer hardware. That is, when you are performing some computation work on your system, then what you are doing, you are using its resources. These resources, they are your computer resources. It could be your file system, it could be your hard drive, it could be your CPU power, and so on. So in the case of the cloud, when we are saying cloud computing, then you are using these resources because you need to do a certain activity. So when you are performing certain activity, you need the resources. But now now the thing is that these resources are not present on your system, or you are not using your computer resources, but you are using the computer resources over the internet. And these computer resources, they are being provided by some vendor which we call your computer service, cloud service provider. So cloud computing, user do not have a dedicated server or machine at his own place. Instead, he uses these services which are being provided by the service provider. Now the question comes, we are already using the client server, because when we are saying we are using the dedicated server that is not present at my place or somewhere else, then we are already on the distributed computing part. Then what's the why we are going for the cloud? We will look on all these factors later on when we see the exact definition of the cloud computing. So for it to be considered cloud, you need to access your data or your programs over the internet, or at the very least have the data synced with other information over the web. This definition is very important. This has been provided by the NIST. So what it says? It says cloud computing is a model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources. And what are these? These are your network, servers, applications, storage, that is a hard drive, etc., that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management effort or service provider interaction. So this we are getting very lot of things, coming across a lot of things under this definition. Now the first thing is, it is a model, computing model. What it does, it talk about for ubiquitous computing. It talk about the convenience of the users, that is whatever things resources you are using over the internet. it should be user friendly. The user, any user should be able to use them. These users, they can be from a very educative class, or it may be any general public user. On demand, that is whatever be the requirement of the user, accordingly these resources could be allocated to the customers or users. Then another important thing in this definition, shared pool, that is these resources is not being dedicatedly allocated to a single user. Multiple users, they are using those resources. Configurable computing, configurable, that is whatever be the requirement, according that these resources can be provisioned or provided to the customers. Rapidly provisioned, this is another thing which is present in this definition. Rapidly provisioned, that is whenever the customers want these services, he can pay for it and immediately he can gain the access to those services or to those resources. Released, that is whenever the requirement or the need of the user got fulfilled, that particular resource could be released, or you could say it could be returned back to the CSP. And all these activities, they should be done without minimal management effort, that is no third party interaction is required. And if you are interacting with the service provider, again in that case it should be done in a hassle free manner. So according to this definition, we are using certain resources over the internet. These resources, they are being provided by some service provider. You are paying for those services. Whenever you are asking for certain service or certain resource, it could be easily provided to you. Whenever your need got fulfilled, you can easily return those services to the service provider. So according to this definition, the cloud model, it promotes availability and is basically composed of 5 essential characteristics. And what are these 5 essential characteristics according to the NIST? On demand, self-service, we have seen whenever the user required, he can give a demand for it, send a request to the CSP, and CSP immediately can provide this to the user. We need internet, and for this broadband is required because we are using the resources over the internet. Resource pooling is there, multiple users, they are using those, or you could say they are using those resources. Then rapid elasticity, that is whenever the user is required, it could be easily allocated, and whenever the user don't require it, those resources can be easily released also. Measured service, that is pay as you pay for what you are using. So the you are paying for those services. Later on we will see 3 service models. And what are these service models? These are your SaaS, your PaaS, and your IaaS. According to the services or the resources which are used by you over the internet. So accordingly we are having 3 service model. When you are using only the infrastructure, then in that case we go for this model, infrastructure as a service. When you need certain kind of platform to develop certain applications and you don't want to go for the licensing and all these things at your own premise, then you can ask the CSP for those platforms. Then in that case you are using platform as a service. And when you are using certain applications which are being deployed over the cloud, then you are working over the SaaS service model, that is a software as a service. Also we are going to look into 4 deployment models, that is basically how the cloud could be implemented in an organization. It could be a private cloud, it could be a community cloud, it could be public, or it could be a hybrid cloud. That is, when the cloud is being available to the general users, then we say that we are working over the public cloud. But when a cloud is solely dedicated to a particular organization, then we say that we are working over the private cloud. When certain private organizations, they form a community for to satisfy certain requirements, then in that case we can go for the community cloud. And what is hybrid cloud? Hybrid cloud, another name for the hybrid cloud is heterogeneous cloud, and this cloud is combination of the private and public cloud. We will see later on in later lectures what are service models in detail and the deployment models. Now, how this particular technology, that is cloud computing, came into existence? It is due to the possibility, or you could say due to the implementation of these three basic technologies. That is, nowadays your network is speed, internet speed, it is fastly evolving. So we could say fast wide area network is behind the scene. Then we are having nowadays the server computers, or you could say the machines on which you could deploy the cloud model. They are becoming more powerful, as well as they are becoming cheaper also. And another important technology which is working behind the scene, due to which the cloud concept may come into existence, is the virtualization concept. As we have already seen, what is virtualization? So basically in virtualization, what we are doing, we are virtualizing the resources, and we are to the user, we are providing these virtual resources which we are combining into a single virtual machine. As I already told you in the previous definition, what we have seen, that is shared pool. Users, they are sharing these resources. Now for sharing the resources, we could go for two methodology. One says that you just divide the resources among the users, and the users, they can go for use those resources. Or we could say that these resources, when the user is sharing those resources, then at a time only one user can use that particular resource, and other users, they need to wait. Another thing is that we could create the virtual machines of these resources, and all the users, they can get a copy of those resources, that is a virtual machine, and they can do whatever they want to do on their virtual machine. In this way, they are having abstraction view, that is each and every user's virtual machine is separated. So in this way, we can achieve the security also. So another important technology, you could say, behind, which is running behind the scene, is the virtualization. And with the help of this virtualization technique, we are able to go for the resource pooling part. Now, the characteristics which we have seen in the earlier, we are going to discuss one by one. On the very first one is the on-demand self-service. It says that the user can unilaterally provision computing capabilities such as server time, network storage as needed automatically without requiring human interaction with service provider. On-demand, it is there, that is whenever the user required, it could be given to the user. Then broad network access, that is we require a good network speed. This is another important characteristics for the cloud computing. Resource pooling, it says that the provider's computing resources are pooled to serve multiple consumers, and here we are using the multi-tenant model with different physical and virtual resources which are being dynamically assigned and reassigned according to consumer demand. There is a sense of location independence in that customer generally has no control or knowledge over the exactly where these resources are being physically located. Example of resources, it may include storage, processing, memory and network bandwidth. So in the case of the resource pooling, as I already told you that we will create virtual machine, each user will get its own virtual machine, and whether you are using any kind of service model, it could be your infrastructure, it could be IaaS, PaaS or SaaS, and whatever being done is done through virtualization, and the users, they are being assigned each virtual machine, so the multi-tenancy concept could be achieved. That is, the users, they are paying for this, and multiple users, they are using the same hardware resources. That is, if I, for example, I am having a hard disk, so I have created virtual machine 1, virtual machine 2, and I am having two users, U1 and U2. Both the users, we have allocated both the virtual machines to U1 and U2, and but the physically the resource is same. So what is happening, we are renting the same resource to the multiple users. So we could say that the cloud computing, it support the multi-tenancy concept. Moreover, VM1, it could be different from VM2. This is not mandate that both the machines, they are going to be same. For example, if I am having 100 GB hard disk, so I could create a virtual machine of 80, one of 80, virtual machine 2, it could be of 100. So it depends upon the user requirement. So moreover, we are talking about the dynamically, that is, whenever the, for instance, this user need more 20 GB in the near future, then we could assign more 20 GB to user 1 immediately. So dynamically provisioning of resources is possible. Rapid elasticity, another important characteristics, it says capabilities can be elastically, that is, on demand. It could be provisioned and it could be released in the cases automatically, that is, it should be done in a hassle-free way to scale rapidly outward and inward, commensurate with demand. To consumer, the capabilities available for provisioning often appear to be unlimited and can be appropriated in any quantity at and any time. That is, from the user or the customer perspective, he can think that if he required 80 GB right now, it could be allocated. If he require more 80 GB in the near future, then again he will get more 80 GB in the near future. So for him, the resources which he or she is using is the of unlimited capacity. So rapid elasticity is there. Then measured service, that is, user need to pay for which resources he or she is using. Now, what are the benefits of cloud computing? The very first benefit is least cost, because you are going or working on the pay as you go model. So the cloud computing has revolutionized how business access IT services, infrastructure and software by removing or reducing the need for capital investment. That is, if you are a, let's suppose you are a startup, then at the beginning, at the very beginning of your starting a business, you need a lot of infrastructure or you need a lot of budget, and if you don't have, then you can't compete with the big sharks in the market. So in this case, those startups, they can go in the initial beginning of their or starting a business, they can go for the cloud resources and they can expand their businesses. Power and capacity, the cloud offers practically unlimited, because I already told you what is the meaning of unlimited concept in the cloud computing. So here the users, they are in a view that they are having the unlimited access to the data storage and processing power. And how this is possible? Because we have done the pooling of the resources with the help of virtualization, and moreover, the servers or the machines which are physically on being used to provide the cloud services, they are geographically distributed servers, they could be anywhere. So whereas before only the richest companies, they could afford to start up necessary local computing infrastructure, now small scale companies, they can also go for you could say provide services in the market. Backup and recovery. Initially, if you are having the infrastructure available within your organization premise, then backup, recovery, maintenance, all things need to be done by you. You should have a dedicated team for looking after all these things. So you need expenses, you need to do expense in terms of a maintenance team. Whereas in the case of the cloud, since we are not having anything available with us, all the things is to be maintained by the cloud. So the maintenance part is also left with the CSP. So the local data backups are still advisable as a precaution. That is, if you are using certain storage capacity over the cloud, then it is advisable that you should also do a backup. But if you are not doing, then again it is being done regularly by your CSP. So the cloud backup offers an easier, less resource intensive method to protect your data. Most cloud providers, they distribute the backups between the data center. And why they are distributing the backups? Because in case if one of the data problem comes in one of the data center, then your data is available with somewhere else and you can retrieve your data from there. System integration, this is another benefit for any companies. Integrating various locally controlled computer systems and apps can be problematic, whereas in this case the integration is managed by the CSP, and moreover the CSPs nowadays, they are doing this in an automatic way. Flexibility, that is change can also be a painful process for if we are going for the local or on-site IT networks, or we are going when we are going for the in-house development. Now what is happening, the your CSPs, they are looking on this. So it is flexibility is another important benefit which we got in cloud computing. Accessibility, that is with heavy lifting performed by the cloud, employees of a company can normally access the applications they need remotely, whereas in the pre-cloud age, that is when we are talking about the on-site, on-premise infrastructure, then they might have needed to travel across the town to access a company machine. They can now usually log in via a secure password from a laptop or even a mobile device. Speed to the market, that is it has due to less budget, the small companies, they have gained momentum and in the market, and they can compete for the large companies. Enhanced security, although many business owners they are concerned about the security implications of your cloud, compliant cloud service provider, that is a cloud service provider who is following certain kind of standards, is more likely to improve the security. Why? Because the security part is now being looked after the CSP. He is using various OSINT tools and other cyber security measures so that the data of the its customers, it could be safe. Whereas in the case if you are having a on-site infrastructure, then in cyber security part becomes your problem. So the most reputable CSPs are also committed to complying with data protection measures, particularly since the industry is moving towards shared liability between data processors and data controllers. A level playing field for SMEs, a major advantage of the cloud is that it has enabled them to compete as equal with the big businesses by assessing and developing software and systems that otherwise have been very expensive for them. Again, environmental protection is another important benefit which we got in cloud computing, because here now the computing resources, they are physically available, and we are creating the virtualization of these resources. For example, if I am having 3 users or customers, U1, U2 and U3, then what we are doing, we are creating 3 virtual machines, VM1, VM2 and VM3, that is we are providing the virtualization of resources. But physically all these virtualized machines, they are working on the same physical machine. So what has happened, we have not only reduced the cost, but we are moving towards the green computing also. So cloud computing indirectly working on the green computing part, because we have saved the resources, or you could say we have reduced the carbon imprint. But cloud computing do come with its own risk and limitations. And the very first limitation is your network connectivity dependency. That is, we are dependent on the network. We have seen earlier that broadband network, it is one of the important characteristics for the cloud. So you can, if you don't have the internet, then you cannot go for the cloud. But if you are having we are totally dependent upon the internet for using the cloud resources. If the speed is not good, or if we are having a intermittent connectivity, then in that case we are not able to use the cloud services efficiently. Another important problem is the limited control, since the vendor, that is a cloud service provider, is in charge of all the infrastructure, all the platform and all the services, and being a customer, we are not having a control on those resources. There is a limited control, so there is a problem. What if my sensitive data got leaked from the cloud servers? So it is a kind of thing which is in which the customers, they feel fear that what happened if their data got leaked over the cloud. Another important drawback is the vendor lock-in. That is, if I'm using some services being provided by IBM and I found that now the Amazon is providing the services much better than the IBM, then I want, since I'm paying for those services, so instead of IBM, I want to go for the Amazon or any XYZ vendor. Then in that case, what will happen? Whatever the survey, you could say the data or the processing you have earlier done with company A, you cannot say, okay, provide me the portability to company B. So it is a serious challenge during migration. That is, you cannot migrate from one vendor to another vendor. Another important problem is downtime. That is, when we are having, another important drawback is the downtime, that is the challenges due to technical outages, since we are over the cloud. So whenever the maintenance part is being done by the CSP, he is doing according to its own convenience. And when there is a certain downtime or outage is happening, and you are doing a important processing at that time, then your work, it would get affected. Another important limitation is the vulnerability to attacks. Serious challenge of information theft in case of cloud, because we are not in charge of the resources. Another someone else is in charge of the resources. Our data is being residing somewhere else, and I don't know where the servers are being located. Moreover, what kind of cyber security measures have been adopted by the vendors, and how exactly those being implemented by the vendor, I don't know exactly. So in this case, my virtual machines, or the resources which I am using, they are more vulnerable. My data is more vulnerable to attack. It could be used or stolen by someone else. So we have already discussed possible downtime, vulnerability to attack, security issues and all these things. So I'm skipping these things. Now the factors for opting the cloud computing, that is when the company decide that it will want to go for cloud. The very first thing, the organization first do the CBR, that is cost benefit ratio. You should determine, that is, what is the cost benefit, or you could say it will the profit it will get if he is implementing the infrastructure on site, or if he is using the infrastructure by the service provider. If there is a huge profit or he is getting, only then he would go for the cloud. Otherwise, local infrastructure is the appropriate one. Speed of delivery, that is, before choosing the cloud service provider, it is mandate to evaluate his services thoroughly. The key point here is to find out whether in opting the cloud, the delivery speed of your business increases or not. The cloud you have opted should increase the delivery speed of your business for better returns. That is, if you are providing certain services to customers, then in that case, you need to see that how fast these services could be availed by the customer if you are deploying them over the cloud. Usage capacity, it is a good practice to evaluate beforehand. That is, how much capacity of the cloud will be used by. That is, you could do R&D. How much resources you need to go over the cloud. The cloud provides numerous power to your business. It is up to you and how much you are going to use it. To fully unleash the power of cloud, it's important to use it maximum. And if you are not using it fully, ultimately you are paying for it. And if you are not utilizing those resources fully, and then in that case you are wasting the resources. Regulated data, that is, before going for the cloud, you should see what kind of regulations, regulated norms being followed by the CSP and by you. There must be a compatibility between you. If you are using certain kind of regulatory norms of a particular country and the CSP, the service provider, is not ready to follow those compliance, then in that case you won't go for the cloud. Local IT infrastructure, it is important to understand the corporate and IT infrastructure of your organization. The migration from local to cloud sometimes becomes very painful for the employees. So knowing clear, if you are aware what the benefits you are getting before moving the cloud, and the pain which the employees they are bearing is fruitful in the near future, only then you should opt for the cloud computing. So basically, we have seen the definition of cloud. What are the five essential characteristics of cloud? What are advantages, disadvantages of cloud, and why, when the company should decide to go over the cloud. So these are the particular concepts which we have discussed in this lecture. This is the reference which I have used for my lecture. Thank you and Jai Hind.